without that, one of the best things you can do to improve any fishing lake, really, or any lake, apart from stock assessments and stock manipulation, all that sort of thing, nettings and just looking at your fish, is without doubt margins. Not all, but a big percentage of the fisheries we work at, and I'm at a holiday park right now, and most of them, whilst to people who, if you just walk in past, you think, oh, it looks quite pretty, but the two major things that affect your margins are lack of plants and undercut banks from erosion. And a lot of people say that, lots of trees is good on your margins, etc., etc. But we don't agree. Most lakes that are surrounded by trees, we've done lots and lots of films on it before, because it's the reality of what we see. You just increase in leaf drop. Now, I love trees. There's some beautiful trees on this estate here, but the ones that are right next to the water are just damaging the water. They're either falling in, they're leaning in, they're gonna fall in, and all their leaves are dropping in the lakes, causing silt. So, and people can't get their heads around that a lot of the time, especially a lot of sort of anglers who don't look at things the way we would, because we're looking at the realities of what happens over a 10, 15, 20 year period on a bit of water. The constant leaf drop. Anglers don't tend to care about that because most of the time they don't own the lakes, they just want to go fishing there. So they don't think about these sort of things long term. They just think, oh, I like fishing under that tree, or I like fishing this way, or that method, or whatever in this area of the lake. And they think that if you change that, it will change how the lake fishes. It normally will, but for the better. And this is backed up by years and years of seeing and doing these things and seeing what happens when certain actions are undertaken. So I've always been a huge advocate in limiting what type of trees and where you plant them directly around the margins of your lake. And then also, when you just have bramble or nettles or just nothing on bare banks, that is 100% a waste, just a waste. A lot of commercials don't have any plants. A lot of big pits don't have many plants. They have a lot of trees, and from an aerial view or on Google Maps, you go, oh, look at that lovely natural sort of state of lake. But it's just adding to a long, slow decay of the water quality if that's all that's happening. So to rectify that, you address these things, and the quicker people get on board with that and do it, they notice big differences. We've proved it on 60-acre lakes, on half-acre lakes, on garden ponds, on everything in between over the last 2-3 decades. It's ridiculous, and it does work. But you're always up against a few anglers. Now, I'm not that bothered about their opinions, to be honest, because if you've got your own lake and you go through all this and you keep neglecting to, sort these issues out in the short term, you get bitten in the long term. It just happens. And people will say, yeah, but this lake here has been there for 100 years and the fish have always been in there and this has happened. I say, yeah, okay, that's fine. But there's always issues that have happened in that period of time, and it always could have been better and improved, and not just simply for fishing, but for the water quality. It all has a knock-on effect. So if you improve the bankside vegetation, if you improve the wind and the light getting on your lakes, I'm not saying get rid of all the trees by any means. I'm saying manage them, crown lift them, pollard them, and start seriously looking at marginal planting. And it is a hassle sometimes. Wildfowl try and pull them up if you're trying to plant them in bare banks. You can use coir rolls and bits and pieces, but there's always options, and it's always worth the effort, because the amount of places we've been where we've been able to do that and see the results on a personal level and throughout the business is phenomenal. And it's fairly basic stuff, really. When you get taught about this stuff when you're a teenager, and then you go out in the field and you start seeing and doing this, then it's pretty obvious. So why people have banks, even on big lakes, I've been told once that it's a waste of time trying to establish plants on massive lakes because it's just not worth the effort. I completely disagree. And the same with certain species of plants like Phragmites and Typhra. I'd rather have those than nothing, but they wouldn't be my first choice of plants. On a 100-acre lake, if you've got beds and beds of Norfolk Reed poking out 20 foot into the lake, and it's a carp fishery, just an example, most of the fish can spend a lot of time in there. If it's unfenced and there's otters around, they probably won't. A lot of the time, there's a lot of variables. But the bottom line is, one of the major things that we see that can be rectified without even getting in the water, although we always like to work in the water when we're planting, is looking at your margins. If you're looking at your lake now, walking around, and it's just, especially at this time of year, it exposes everything. So if you're looking at it thinking it's just bramble and twigs and fallen trees, bit of litter, bit of rubbish, that's not good enough. And there's things you can do. There's grants available. Fishery Improvement Fund will shine brightly on those sort of applications because it's good. It's improving habitat. It's improving water quality. It's aesthetically improving everything. So think about that. It's not just about piling those of fish in your lakes. It's not just about, trying to do what's right for a handful of fishermen. It's doing what's right for the long life of your lake. Limit the siltation, because not a lot of people want to drain lakes and desilt them these days, or put much effort into anything other than buying fish. So limit the frequency and limit the speed of which these things are going to degrade your water quality and degrade the long life of your lake. We've got lakes on the books that are horrendous because they've just been left to nature, and the trees just get out of hand, and everything gets out of hand if you just leave it, and then the costs are then passed on to the next person who has to bear that responsibility, which I think is ridiculous. And it's just naive, really. It's just because a lake has a few big carp in, or a few big perch in, or a few big special fish in, people think, oh, that's because we've nurtured it. No, it's not. It's all down to do with lots and lots of variables. But ultimately, it's a huge thing which is really overlooked. I think stock manipulation and getting fish to grow big is not difficult. I really don't. I think it's more difficult to convince people to do remedial works and do work that's going to benefit the entire lake all the time for the future. It's just food for thought, really.